News recap. Going to cover absolutely everything that has happened in the last week, which has been a lot. It's been an extremely eventful week for United News, which is not particularly a surprise as they've now kind of made it through Lyon and are heading into the final stage of the season. We kind of have given the league up a bit, as we can see, and so it kind of makes sense that it's time to figure the rest out, figure out exactly what we're going to do and start making progress on all of it. So that's what we're going to discuss today. We're going to run through everything from the whole week in case you missed it, discuss it, break it down. This is happening here over live on Big Up. So if you're watching this on YouTube, remember you can always join this is where we do the watch alongs. This is where we do this weekly show and sometimes like the tactics show and things like that as well when we want to record them live. So you're always welcome to join over on this side as well as watch. And for those of you here, thanks for hanging out. And for those of you watching on YouTube, make sure to like the video. All right, let us get into it. We have a lot. Do I buy the Amarim comments on Casemiro? I did not see the Amarim comments on Casemiro. Rhodes News Milking Sesh just dropped. Yes. What did he say on Casemiro? We'll get to that. I'll find that by the end of all the news because I kind of go back to front. Dallo injured just in time for Ahmed to come to right back. Yeah. Yep. Casemiro is an example of a player who can change his mind. Yeah, there you go. Hello, Matthews, my friend. All right, let's get to all of the news and get started. All right. Make sure I do this right. Okay. So this comes back from a while ago. You've officially bought into the Ederson train. There you go. Now you're thinking my language, man. Tato win hopefully soon. But all right. So this comes from Samuel Luckhurst at the start of the week on Monday. It says Manchester United to target striker and goalkeeper in the summer transfer window. It says we intend to sign a goalkeeper and a striker in a drastic summer window, etc., etc. He decided less than 2 months into his tenure that United would need a goalkeeper to compete with Andre Onana, and center forward is an urgent priority. I can tell you for an absolute fact that this is true. Now we've had, and we'll kind of cover this a bit later, we've had people, say like goalkeeper's not a priority and all of that, and they're not wrong either. But as I've shared for months and months and months and months now, United have been looking at competition for Onana. They don't necessarily want to have to spend money on a new number one, on a new goalkeeper, but due to how it's been, they do feel that they may need to buy a new goalkeeper of some sort in order to compete with Andre Onana. Now, obviously, we do know that a striker is a priority. We've all known that now for ages and ages, but Onana, the potential replacement for Onana is certainly a big one on the cards as well. And we will find some news as we get later into this. We will catch up on some further updates on the goalkeeping front. There's a million stories on this that came out on Tuesday. About Cunha. And since then, it has exploded all over the place, right? And Matheus Cunha, obviously, United played Wolves at the weekend. They held discussions with him. He's a target. We've kind of known now for a bit that United are looking to target and bring in 2 goal scorers this summer, not just 1, but 2. And Matheus Cunha is the guy that they actually feel is the best option available. And I want to touch on this in a little bit because I had some conversations when we get to Ornstein ruling out Osimhen. I actually even want to explain that, I guess I can explain it now, that essentially the view is that Cunha is the second best player available to someone like Osimhen. And that's why they're kind of pushing him first as a signing to get in the door, because he's a proven top goal scorer in the Premier League right now, and fits the system to a T. You know, Amarim has done a few different things with his 3-4-3, with his setup at times. And the most important thing is you get two goal scorers in there. And so while Cunha is double the price of Liam Delap, we're pushing it ahead like immediately to try and wrap this up and get it done, simply because he's basically the best player available. With Osimhen off the table, which again we'll discuss in a little more detail in a few minutes. Cunha is the guy that's like, it's the part of the timing of Osimhen being off the table and us really pushing ahead for Cunha are together. It's connected, because essentially it was, well, with the money it would cost for Cunha, with the budget that we have, with the unavailability to get Osimhen, then we need to, get our next best guy. So they're not settling quite at all, really. Cunha is, it's not like Cunha's the alternative to Osimhen, but he kind of is at the same time, where they're saying, okay, well, that's probably the best goal scorer we can get for the money. After Osimhen. So it's an interesting way if you start to think about it like that, and then say if we can get another striker in that's good also in Liam Delap for 30 million, then even better, because then we get both. But the biggest priority is getting Cunha in. That's the second best available player that they think after Osimhen, essentially. And I think that's meaningful. So we held talks. It all kind of pushed ahead. The biggest factor in this deal in Cunha that has to be really, really nailed in and understood is that he wants to join us as well, really badly. He has completely prioritized us. He said, I'm your guy. I want to join United. He has that. And that has changed my perspective a lot on him, as well, from any doubts that I might have carried before, because it tells me he's a guy who wants the responsibility, who wants to shoulder the burden, and and look at things through a bit of a different lens now, in my opinion. And I really think he'll be like Bruno for us. I think he'll be that good, genuinely that good. I did a video yesterday in the morning before the live. I've done like 6 videos in the last couple of days, but I did a video yesterday on Cunha specifically and went over some stats, and it's insane. Like when you compare his output to the number of to the amount of, what is it, like, to the amount of touches and passes he receives, to the amount he gets the ball, um it's unbelievable. He is genuinely a player that he goes to a club that actually carries possession, that actually passes the ball, that actually gets touches in the attacking area, and he can be one of the best players in the league. And that's what I think of him. And Bumo, for what it's worth, showed up on those charts about the same. But for a player who gets less than half the touches that Garnacho does, and that our tens do, Cunha's production is insane. And I speak Garnacho specifically as the main 10 who's been playing, not comparing it to a striker. But Rasmus Højlund gets about as many touches in the box as Cunha. And he's got the 1 goal or the 3 goals or whatever it is, compared to the 14. But it's not just that. The other factor in Cunha that has been amazing to look at statistically is he is an unbelievable chance creator, and I didn't particularly know that either, because his assist numbers aren't high. He has one of the lowest assists to chances created ratio, I believe. Like, he creates a lot more chances than players are finishing them, and that is an interesting one too. So I definitely think he's ready to absolutely blow up in this one. Here we are, April 25th. It looks like it's done, honestly. You've got some reports from Brazil, from their tier ones, essentially saying it's done. Fabrizio's been all over it, saying essentially small details to figure out on his contract. The fee is not a problem. United are willing to pay it. They will pay it in installments, even though it's a release clause. That's, from all reports, acceptable to Wolves. The money's there. The player wants it. The contract is close. Essentially, it's as close to a done deal as it gets at this point. Probably not worth even worrying about or thinking about until whenever is the right time to announce it. Maybe that's after our European campaign is over. Save the good news, for later in case we get bounced. Either we get bounced out of the European and we say, fine, we're out of Europe, but we've got Cunha already done. Boom, in the bag. Get a little bit of optimism going, or we go win the Europa League and we follow it up with not only are we going to Champions League, but we've got a top player coming in as well. There's a lot of good ways to narrate this. You're worried we haven't had a Cunha update from Fabrizio in an hour now. I know, maybe the deal's off, right? Ali, good to see you, my friend. Thanks, buddy. So yeah, so that's Cunha, and I could link 55 stories on Cunha, but they're all the same. The simplicity of it is he's virtually on the cusp of joining us and has prioritized us over anybody else. Then there's this one. And this is an interesting one because we got 3 or 4 good sources on this. And if you've been watching my videos, it was almost a joke that I constantly talked about every video for the 10s, Mastentuono. And we never had any links, Mastentuono. But I said, we've been following Mastentuono, and I would always name him in there. And we got a report from Sky Sports that we are interested in him. We got 2 or 3 very good reports as well from good sources in South America, as well as a couple others in England, that we are interested in Franco Mastantuono. He is a right 10, probably in the system, left-footed. He's 17 right now. He could only join in August. Looks like one of the best talents going right now from as far as young players go. Absolutely an unbelievable talent. The way that he's talked about, the way that he's rated, he could be something special. So his release clause of 45 million euros will be available in August. We'll talk about the budget here. Let's speak about the budget here. No, I'll talk about the budget in a second and how that would tie into this. But yeah, he's available for that in August. So we'd have to wait till then. We will likely have to make sales in order to make that happen. But this is a serious target. It is not a nonsense one. It is not a bullshit link. It's been something United have been following him for a long time. And they're not the only ones. Chelsea, as always, are in for these young South American talents, but I can tell you that both Ashworth and Wilcox had this guy on their radars last summer. And we need his position quite potentially. We do have a ton of 10s, but but they're not good enough. Beyond their starters, they're not good enough. Has the Gyökeres interest died? I think everybody believes he's going to Arsenal, Ali. I think everybody believes Arsenal are the top for him. For you, I can tell you from the United side, Ali, that we haven't really been strongly looking at him for a while. Yeah, and I don't think I don't think we'll go for him. I think it's a pretty clear path for Arsenal, frankly, at this point in time. Chelsea is everywhere. Careful who you talk about in here. Well, they're already looking at him. If there's someone with Argentina in their flag and they're under the age of 21, Chelsea are already looking at him. This one looks like we're gonna snag before anybody else does, and that is Enzo Canabiak. He's a young talent from Le Havre. He's born in Paris, but he's Cameroonian. His family his father's a retired Cameroonian and international footballer. Apparently, he's an amazing young talent, 18-year-old striker, free agent. We've essentially, based on all the reports, we're already wrapping it up for him to go on loan and to sign and then go on loan to Lausanne for a year and then come back to us. So that way he plays some first team football and then we can bring him back after that and he's free. If at that point we sell him, then it's profit. But I think the idea is get more young strikers coming in. And remember, this has been the plan. We don't know yet whether we can get Liam Delap, but if we don't, what do? Well, we need to get some young players coming through. We may end up going for an older target. That's always a possibility. We could end up going for someone like Patrick Schick. We could end up going for somebody, on a short-term deal to help carry us, help lead the line for a year, a Cavani type. But then we really need more young prospects so that we have options next year. We still may end up buying another striker next year in that case, but we at least need some young prospects to come through at the same time. And we have not had a lot. Obviously, we have Cheeto now, but we need more. We do need more than that. So this one looks like it's about done based on all the reports. It's been confirmed by Fabrizio. It's been confirmed by others. I had it very strongly put to me when I asked about it after seeing the first report on Saturday that this was a real thing and this was really happening. A few weeks back, I mentioned United have been looking at a few young strikers in France of African descent. And it seems to be a specialty for Christopher Vivell to be targeting, these kinds of young players. And it makes sense. You see, he's got, his son, his father had 80 appearances for Cameroon, and his brother as well. So he is a Cameroonian, of a Cameroonian heritage, but born in France and plays in France. And there was another name we were linked to, a couple actually that I know we were watching that weren't this guy, but I did know there were a few that we were looking at in addition. And so this seems like the best one. The other ones, I think the problem with them was they had a cost. And we didn't want to spend 20, some of them we could have even 30, 40 million. There's some really good talents over in France, but yeah, it looks like we wanted to not spend the money. One funny thing about Tacticos Online, they said when Pavel came in, we target only Bundesliga players. Little do they know. No, but yeah, I know it is funny. Who do you think we'll pivot to if we miss out on Delap? I'll be honest with you. I really, really don't know because I don't think there's any strikers we can get of the age we want at the 30 million range. Um, in that case, I think we would potentially look to an older striker and buy another young player like a Mastantuono. So we have options because Cunha can play in the 9 in this system under Amorim. Um, Xerxes can play in the 9 as a false 9 in this system with Cunha around him. I would love to see us, if we couldn't get a top striker in, I would absolutely love to see us do something like get Brian Mbumo in, and go Mbumo Cunha in the 10s with Xerxes as a false 9. That would work. Amorim played with a false 9 first few seasons at Sporting. He's more of a false 9, more of a Xerxes type in the Paulinho that he had there, and that would be an option. But we really aren't sure. We're not really looking past Delap at the moment, but I do have my concerns as to whether he will join us or not. So yeah, we're gonna have to see on that. I'm really not sure who it'll be in that case. Mateta, we've been very interested in, but it is a very expensive potential transfer given the age, could be 50, 60 million. Go for Ollie Watkins or Rashford. And look, Watkins is an idea for me that we don't, United have obviously followed Watkins and wanted to sign him a few years ago, but Watkins is one I'm quite interested in the idea of, not to say there's anything in it at this point in time, because it makes a lot of sense. 28, 29 years old, come in, lead the line, let some of the younger players develop, score a few goals. I think he'd be good in the system. Keep Rashford for striker. Well, Amorim says today that comment on Casemiro, that's an example of a player who can change his mind. Maybe Rashford can change his mind and stay as well. I'm not suggesting that'll happen, but Rashford would be open to staying at United. Obviously, a lot of things would have to happen for that to work, but I'm not saying that's even slightly likely, but who knows? But yeah, a lot. I think a lot goes on the table if we miss out on Delap, we don't really know what the backup plan to that is yet. We know in general what some of the options are, but we don't yet know what they'll go for, right? We know that some of the options are older players, potentially like a Patrick Schick. We know that Mateta is an option, but some of these are going to have to mean we have to sell in order to make that happen as well. So we don't really know what the backup is, but that's why they wanted Cunha done so badly, that they've got at least one top goal scorer in, because they might have to move some shit around to get another one if we don't get Liam Delap, right? We might have to make a sale first, or we might have to get Champions League in order to afford the next best option that we want at striker. So it gets up in the air. We do know a lot of options, but we don't know what they'll do if we miss on Liam Delap. Does that make sense? And we probably won't know until they make that decision, but they're not going to make that decision until we see about Liam Delap, which we should know fairly soon anyway. Ineos will not accept keeping Rashford on the wages on. That would be one of those things that has to happen. But that pertains to our next story, which is Rashford doubts he will play for Manchester United again under Amorim. There's a bunch of stories that came out on Tuesday. And basically, in general, Rashford's ruled out the possibility of moving to London. Ideally, would like to join a club that's qualified for the Champions League. So there's a bit of him saying that I don't want to join Aston Villa if they're not in the Champions League. I don't want to go to like Crystal Palace. I don't want to go to London. He's not going to join one of our rivals like Arsenal or Chelsea or Tottenham or somebody like that, right? He's just not going to do it. So given all of that, what we essentially know is that Rashford's really probably looking to leave England if he's not coming back to United. He's looking to join somewhere like Barcelona would be his dream destination, where they have admirers of him, and that would be something we would definitely do. It's not 100% ruled out that he's returning. I'm just saying that as a fact, not as a point of, of anything at all in it. But it's not totally ruled out. But it would be entirely about him and Amorim, and convincing Amorim of that. And then very likely there would also have to be a contract restructure. Me personally, I would still love to see it, but you never know. I don't think that's going to happen. But Barcelona, he had interest from a few clubs in Italy, Juventus as well. Napoli, well, looking for wingers. You never know. You never know with some of those Italian clubs. They like to come in for our players. So I do hope he gets a good move, and gets to go where he wants. But and I think he's shown well enough in Champions League and such that he's still a player that some big European clubs will look at and say, yeah, we need more in the CL. Rashford's a performer in big games. He just is, and if he's sorted things out where he's happy and things are going well, regardless of whether there's a route back at United, then I think there's plenty of clubs that would take him. Then there was an interesting story here, because we've talked about the 10s, the right 10s, the other 10, position. We've got Cunha for the left 10 basically done. We know we're looking at striker. We talked about Mastantuono. We know Dibling's been a target. And then in this one, James Ducker's talking about City's McAtee. Obviously, Wilcox and such would be very familiar with him. He's a really good player. Man City are looking at Morgan Gibbs-White, Florian Wirtz, and that could open the door for McAtee to leave. Now, you can't see it in the title here, but he also says that United are interested in James McAtee. Not much more in that story, but it's just an interesting one, I think, to look at, because what the hell, he's a good player. He's left-footed, but mostly because he just matches our profiling of that right 10, that left-footed right 10 type of player, and where he can play and all of that. So I think that's just one to keep an eye on as an option. Obviously, there's some implications. You're talking about McAtee, you talk about Dibling, you talk about Mastantuono, but we signed a left-sided player. So now you're saying, well, are we looking to sell another player and add another 10 in? And you start to say, the road here for Garnacho looks a little bit rough in terms of where they go. So we will see there, but we can talk about that more in a minute. Then there was a video from Mr. Ornstein. He talks about Arsenal, but then he talks about United at a certain point. And essentially what he shared on this video was that United will not turn to Victor Osimhen should they miss out on Liam Delap, who is our top striker target. So he fully ruled that out at that point in time. Now, further explanation went in yesterday from him, and as well then Laurie on The Athletic. I also shared my understanding afterwards, because what happens with things like this is someone like Ornstein goes and says something like that, and he's first. Bearing that in mind, he's first. It's David Ornstein. He's first to a hell of a lot of things, right? So he says that, and just the day before, we're still talking about Osimhen being an option. Wheeler's talking about Osimhen being an option. There's like 6 reports on Osimhen being an option. But then David Ornstein goes and fully, at that point, fully kills it. He never did before. This was new news. That's the important thing to gather. And essentially, the point was, we have looked into the Osimhen deal. We were following the Osimhen deal. We'd even looked at the potential of a swap for the Osimhen deal. But in recent days, I've decided he is not an option for us. And the biggest factor is his wages. This was what was explained by Ornstein as well, myself, and as well, I think Laurie mentioned something on Talk of the Devils, but that the problem is, for anything to happen, we were going to need him to take a wage cut. We were not going to be paying the type of wages that he's asking for. He has that on the table. The money, the transfer fee, and the wages are on the table from Saudi, and it appears that that's where he's headed, and that we would rather take that, go to Saudi, than a pay cut that would be necessary to come in for us. So yeah, that's the concern there. So we're not getting Osimhen. So basically, that's what he shared in that. We're not getting Osimhen. And then he shared a few other things of interest. He talked about Cunha, that we're obviously looking at Cunha, yada, yada, all of that. And then he said that, what was the other thing he said in there? That was a rather interesting. Damn, I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what he said, but it was meaningful. Oh yes, he confirmed that the money was there for Cunha and Delap already, the 90 to 100 million. If you go back to my PSR versus PR video from the end of January, early February, I said, look, I talked about the cuts, I talked about the budget, I talked about everything, and I said the expected budget this summer before sales, and even without Europe, because they've been planning for worst case scenario, is 90 to 100 million. That has been confirmed now. We have the 90 to 100 million ready to spend regardless. The other thing he says is that you have to listen to it within the context of this, because he says we don't want a new number one. What he says there was, it wasn't a plan to replace Onana. Totally correct. But the way he's talking about it is that Onana needs to do better, because it's been making it a problem that we have to solve. So again, going back to that keeper thing, we wanted competition, but it's becoming such a problem that maybe we do have to even solve the Onana thing now. But we still don't want to. We still don't want to have to spend all the money there. And hopefully we can just get competition. So we're hoping Onana has a good end of the season as well. So a few bits and pieces in there that are of interest as well. Then there is this from The Guardian, Jacob Steinberg. Now, this is about Hausen, but what it does also say in here is that Chelsea are keen to bring in a winger and have considered Manchester United's Alejandro Garnacho and Borussia Dortmund's Jamie Gittins. So Chelsea are still strongly looking at Alejandro Garnacho. Hello, Arjun. Good to see you. So they're strongly looking at him, as we know as well is Napoli. So those are the two main options. There was another story. There was a few stories on Garnacho, but sorry, Telegraph, no thank you. But it's the same story, so we don't need to recover that. Then there was a Q&A with David Ornstein. I don't want to do the whole thing and do that, but he, essentially said Cunha is likely to go. This is the biggest question that I wanted to say on here. Hi, David. Are there still links to Alejandro Garnacho leaving? There's a big answer here that is confirming a lot of what we know. Good news, interesting stuff as well. It says, yes, we understand this to be highly possible if proposals are deemed suitable by United and Garnacho himself. So we're very much willing to sell Alejandro Garnacho. Okay. What, Smokey? As we know, exits for the like of Rashford, Sancho, Antony, Malacia, Casemiro, and Højlund are also plausible, while the salaries of Christian, Eriksen, and Victor Lindelof will leave the wage bill. So he also listed Rasmus Højlund among the sales potentially. So the rest we knew: Rashford, Sancho, Antony, Malacia, Casemiro, potentially, and Højlund. But Højlund he also listed among the sales. So it says we're willing to sell Højlund, but that the sale of Garnacho is highly possible. But then the final one is there's a growing sense Kobbie Mainoo will stay, although there's a contract situation that needs to be addressed. Is a Chicago thing? I don't know. I don't know. It might be a Midwest thing. It very well could be. It very well could be. It very well could be a Midwest thing to just kind of wave things away with your voice like that. It could be. I've never thought about it. Yeah, so anyway, Kobbie looking like he's going to stay. That's something I've been saying for months and months. He wants to stay. They've been having meetings ongoing that Garnacho could be sold. And the thing here to understand is that if our budget is there for Delap and Cunha, if our budget is there already, the sale of Garnacho, someone asked this question in the chat a minute ago. Sorry, I didn't answer it at that time because I was going to get to it. If we sell Garnacho for 40 million pounds for pure profit, would it give us around 100 million in spending room? Technically, it gives us more in the short term, but you don't want to spend all of it. So realistically, yeah, probably we could. I would say more like look at it like double. That we could spend maybe 80 is the right way to think about it, just to be safe, to save some of that money to help balance the books for the year and for the next year. So think about it like double. But yes, it would open the door to potentially 2 signings coming in should we sell Garnacho. And number one, we talked about Mastantuono, all of that. When we look at the squad, we start to say there's not a ton of space, and so if we sell Garnacho and do that, then that starts to make a lot more sense why we'd be looking at some of these other players. So that was one of the main things there. Here was Fabrizio confirming this potential signing of Enzo Cannavaro. And then a big one, to me anyway, a really big one, which is that this from Fabrizio as well that came out yesterday. That United have discussed Ederson as a potential midfield option during meetings between the board and Amorim. United have been in contact with the players' camps for months to express their interest. Ederson was the top of my list for the number 8 position if we were to sign in that area, which, as far as I understood, would be the signing we would make if we go and address the midfield, is to make a signing at the 8, someone to partner Manuel Ugarte this summer, someone to play in the midfield, and someone to give us the role that Amorim really wants out of his midfielder, which is that second player, guy who can progress the ball, who's all action, defensive, press, win the ball, get in the box, score some goals, that kind of attacking player. He tried Kobbie Mainoo there for a while, and I think it was moderately successful, but he mentioned the concerns about him not necessarily having the athleticism of the legs, or the defensive work was a bit too much. We've seen him move Bruno there as a solution to build up, but move him back up front. This has been an area I've strongly felt we would be making a signing. If we signed in the midfield, it would be here. And it appears that is likely going to be an area we address if we have the money. He will likely cost around 50 million euros, but he fits the exact profile that we want for that position and is a player we've been following for a long time. It's interesting to compare Bruno and Ederson at center mid on that website. Yeah, I mean, it's tricky because I think Bruno spent quite a bit of time playing forward as well. But here, I could pull it up if you're interested. They're not that far apart, in some ways. Obviously, Bruno is a bit more of a creator. We do know that, but not that different. Bruno, obviously, the creative genius that he is, but Ederson, that kind of all action player. When you look at the balance of somebody who does all the defensive work. You want someone who's more all action around him as well. So, that is the big thing here. Bruno's come a long way this season as well. He's definitely improved in some of the things that he's done compared to last. But I think the idea is here that we can. This is the type of player that we want. They're not there to win to pick up the ball off the back line. They're there to back up the press, win the ball high, all of that. The Ugarte Ederson would strongly match the midfield pairings that Amram used at Sporting to a T. And essentially it solves the bit of the issue with Kobbie Mainoo, with, all of that. Now, I still think Kobbie potentially has a future there at the 8, but I do think that he'll need to be more athletic. He needs to improve on some of his physical traits, his fitness, things like that for any position really. Because if you play him in the 10, you need someone who can make runs, and you need someone who can drop deep, get up the pitch quickly. If you're playing him in the midfield, you've got to be able to back that press up. You've got to be able to defend. You got to be so. No matter where Mainoo plays, I think he's going to have to improve his fitness. Unfortunately, he's been injured a lot, and so that's been a part of it as well. So I don't think it has any serious implications for Kobbie. It's just he's got to improve on where he's going to play and really nail a spot down. And whether that's in the 10 or in the 8, it just gives us more options in the midfield. And if Kobbie nails that down, you could play Ederson and Kobbie together in some games. So it's not like it's this huge implication for Kobbie, as well as we saw Kobbie likely to stay. So that kind of confirms that point too. It's not about replacing Kobbie Mainoo. It's we need somebody who's really ready in that position in the midfield, especially with Eriksen leaving. If Casemiro stays, you could play Ederson with Casemiro. You can play Ederson with Ugarte. You can play Ugarte and Casemiro. You can play Mainoo, and you start to get more combinations that actually work. But Ederson is an extremely physical, strong midfielder who will do, and he's quite good going forward as well. And he's a good goal scorer. He's an eye for goal as well. So I think it's a shrewd signing. He was number 1 on my list for the midfield in terms of what would fit with Amram's system next to Ugarte. So it makes a lot of sense to me. And again, I think we'll have to sell in order to make this happen. It should be good for Kobbie, gives him time. Right. That's the thing. Kobbie's young. He doesn't have to start. We look at the thing with Garnacho. And whenever I say, hey, we need to sell Garnacho, people are like, well, he's young and he shouldn't be starting. So, and I say, I understand that. He's not good enough to be starting, but he has been. And he's not good enough to be. And so now we have to look at the matter of, we need better forwards, so we might need the money from him, right? I don't want the same situation for Kobbie where it's like, well, he has to start because we don't have players, even though he's so young. He doesn't have to start every game. He doesn't have to be the guy that we're putting all the weight on already. We saw that Ten Hag tried that and burned him out entirely, and ended up him getting injured and injured and injured, and has resulted in a bit of a lull. I wouldn't say a fall off, but a lull in his trajectory. And I'm like, I don't want to see that. So if he can be rotation at the 8 and rotation at the 10 and really find his place, that's good for a player of his talent to get there, to become that kind of player that he could be without the weight of the world on him. And I think that'd be better for his development. I don't want to see us screw up another player, especially not one as good as Kobbie, because he has genuine world class traits if we can get him out of him. Then there was this brilliant news that Amad Diallo is set to be back in training next week. He will join on Monday for his first return to full training. Okay. So he will likely be in the squad for the Europa League on May 1st. Don't know if he'll be ready to start. Match fitness is different, but he should be ready to be in the squad, get some minutes, and that will still make a big impact. Then a big story following that has just come out today, following all of our earlier talk about the goalkeeper, is Joan Garcia. This is a good source in Spain, that we've contacted his entourage. Now, a few months ago, we got a story from Matteo Moretti that we had spoken with this guy's agent, and it's the agent of Lee King-in, Joan Garcia, and somebody else. And I said, hey, we're looking at keepers. This could be the guy. This could be the guy, Joan Garcia. He's a good player. He has a release clause. It would cost 25 million. We're United are in a hurry to find an alternative to Onana. So, the thing about this is that if we were to move on by India for 5 to 8 million at the end of the season, it would fund this deal. So we wouldn't have to see this big offer from Onana. Now, Fabrizio was once again talking about Onana has interest from Saudi. If an offer does come in, we could sell him, but alternatively, we could sell by India and fund a keeper like this. Again, it's a perfect kind of option because we don't want to spend an enormous amount of money. We don't want to spend an enormous of money. So 25 million euros, 20 million pounds, we could get this deal done very likely. We could move on by India and get this really, really likely. So it looks like an option that we have fully lined, that we have there, that would be easy to execute, that would be on the table, that could be done, and then we could get a new keeper. So we'll see. That would essentially be we'll see what happens there, whether it's regarding, we'll see still. There's still a few things about this that have to come, obviously. We'd have to make some decisions, but we spoke with his representative a while back. And so I think the option is there and we're aware of it, but we'll see what happens as of yet, if we get offers and how Onana does for the rest of the season and all of that. Now I spoke about this one. This has also just come out. I spoke about this a while back, not this, but this right here. Betis are going to offer us an additional loan for Antony. We're going to ask for an obligation, and that is okay. The reason being that Antony, because we paid, well, fuck me, man, can you believe it? 82 million for him. He still has 2 years left at this point in time. That makes him a 32 million pound transfer if there's a sale this summer. Still, nobody's going to pay that, but Betis really like him. So they will likely offer a loan. We're going to say, hey, at the end of it, we want an obligation for 16 million. That means next summer we get to wipe that amortization, or 20, maybe we'll even put some option, some add-ons, but something that is more affordable. And that way they can, in that case, get a deal done. They can have him, but we can wipe his amortization next summer. So we'll probably want that, so that no matter what, we're done. It's over. But that we'll have some negotiations over this soon. They're going to be looking at somebody. They're going to be looking at something else on this. It wasn't about Garcia. It was about Inaki Pena from Barcelona. Maybe it was. We never got the specific name, but regardless, Joan Garcia is a good option, and I'm sure that is one that we'll consider, but we'll have to wait and see on the sales. Why would a person sign off the Antony? But if they get Champions League, who, Betis? Maybe they could afford him then, but I don't think they're a club that can afford much by way of transfer fees. I don't totally understand the finances of Spanish clubs, but they always tend to be weird. Let me head over here so I can kind of just then summarize where things are going to look like. Just making sure I didn't miss any other stories from this morning. Anything else from this morning that I missed? Dowlow has unfortunately been ruled out with injury. Now that might mean we go with Dorgu on the right, Amos on the left. There was that, which was a bit of a surprise given Dowlow's been so reliable for a couple of years now. Let's see. I don't think I've missed anything else. Yeah, we can't. If they get an obligation, we need to make sure they can't break it, like the Sancho one. Yeah, it's a funny one, a very, very weird one, isn't it? But all right. So just to wrap up this video as to where we are at. Okay, good. It's just to wrap up this video as to where we are at, what we're looking at. So essentially, this is the squad we're looking at to have initially as our main targets pre-sales. Actually, I don't know. Pre-sales, who would it be? I'm gonna assume this is Bruno just based on how we're building the squad out. That leaves us potentially short in here. It could be just Casemiro and Ugarte still going to next season. So you can see why, it's a big deal that we need still to make some more signings. Because no, because we're still a bit short. We're still a bit short. This could well be, Lenny Yoro, Maguire, and Heaven. This is what we can do without champions, not Heaven. I was thinking Mazraoui. It could be Heaven on the left and Mazraoui or Yoro on the right. We don't know yet. But without any sales, without any Champions League, without anything else, this is what we're looking like. Obviously, then we'll have Højlund, Xerxes, Garnacho, Mount, Casemiro, Collier, Kone, Amos, Dallo, Delict, Lissandro, Heaven, etc. Right? Could we get an easy 15 to 20 for Collier? Potentially, and that is something to think about by India. So we've got depth and all of that, but the depth isn't so great. And so this is like the minimum viable level that we're going for. What we want to do now, the front three is great, but we need more, I think, high quality options there. So I think the idea then is if we can get Champions League or make a sale, we can, if we sell Garnacho or we make a sale or we get Champions League, then it starts to change, a little bit. We start to get some options. Maybe this is like Mainu is our first is a rotational guy here. This is what we could do with Champions League or a single decent sized sale. Okay. Like of Garnacho. This is what it kind of looks like we're lining up is something like this. So a lot more depth in that kind of position. And so that gives us much more, I think, more options, more depth, more possibilities. Obviously, Ahmad can play in the forward line with Dallo over here, so he's another option for the 10. But I think that then this gives us a stronger team. Then we can look for, a new keeper. Maybe we go for Garcia, who's something like that. And then on the center back front, we still don't. Fabrizio did say, I think the other day, and we've been kind of talking about this. We're still looking at it, but we don't really have a priority yet, and it would be kind of further down to the budget. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'd have to go further down the budget in order to make anything. To get to a center back, it'll be later. So we need more sales, or we need a sale and Champions League to get down to that point. So. And then we could maybe get somebody bigger, somebody like Braithwaite that we really like, and then play like a Braithwaite, Yoro, Delict, or Maguire type of setup. But we will obviously need to address center back at some point. Whether we could maybe get away with it for a season, but we're going to need center backs in the future. If Heaven is healthy, obviously it helps. When Lissandro comes back, it helps. But Maguire's getting old. Lissandro's an ACL injury. Heaven's barely played. We will need to address it at some point. Frederickson's an option. That's cool too. But we'll have Dorgu, Amos, Leon, Dallo, Ahmad. So a lot of options in here, which could mean, it gives us more options up here as well. If we miss out on Delap, then the possibility is we make a sale and we go for a different striker, a Mateta or something like that, and sign a 10. And that wouldn't necessarily change all of our plans, but it mean we'd have to spend a bit more. It might be harder to do some other things as well. Okay. That's what I have for today's video, today's live. Thanks for hanging out with me over here on Big Up. For those watching me on YouTube, you can always join. Thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging out. It's been a crazy week so far. I'll be back tomorrow with a pre-match live sometime on Saturday and then live for the watch along on Sunday. Thank you for hanging out with me. Enjoy the rest of your day. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on, and I will see you later as well. To everybody here on Big Up, see you later. Thank you guys. See you, Money, Malava, Smokey, Issa, Car, all of you guys, K10. See you later. Have a good one, J Star.